following segment is taken from the full video, Why I Don't Trust the Media. If you'd like to watch the piece in its entirety, follow the link in the description.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Conflicts of interest. So the last perverse incentive I want to talk about that I believe corrupts media is conflicts of interest. You know, in the first section, I picked on my friend, the talebearer, the guy that likes to sensationalize. In the second section, I picked on my friend, the political guy, whose mind is warped by partisanship, I think. In this section, I'll pick on myself a little bit. By doing what I do as a content creator, making these videos, uploading them to YouTube and Rumble, I open myself up to the same sort of conflicts. I'm essentially producing media. Now, I don't face any real deep conflicts of interest because right now my channel's tiny. Nobody really wants to pay to advertise on my programming. They're not paying me anyway. My channel isn't large enough to monetize on YouTube. So if ads play during this video, it has nothing to do with me and I'm not getting any money for it. But on a side note, I still have an interest in my channel growing. So I face some of the same perverse incentives I was talking about earlier in this video. My whole point with this video is to get people to think and be skeptical of media. And I'm certainly not going to exclude myself from that equation. You should be skeptical of the things I'm saying. You know, I have an incentive to exaggerate to get attention. So you should ask yourself, am I overstating the problem of sensationalism in the media? Am I sensationalizing the problem of sensationalism in the media just to get clicks? Now, I don't think that I am. I think I'm giving a pretty accurate view of the problems in the media, but you should have a healthy skepticism of any media that you're consuming. You should never assume the guy feeding you information isn't corrupt and or incompetent. Even if I have no ill will at all, I still could just be like incompetent. I could be not knowing what I'm talking about. But let's talk about some potential conflicts of interest that could color the way I report on something. Let's say my channel did grow and I got a large enough audience where people that wanted to advertise were actually interested in paying for ads on my content or paying me to do product placements or to review and do a video on the product. Well, when you're getting paid to help sell something, you have an incentive to put it in the best light possible. Tell everybody the reasons why they should be consuming this product and sort of step over and ignore all the reasons why this product maybe isn't the best thing for them. And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I listen to a lot of content creators that talk about health and nutrition, and they like to promote various products. And right now, one of those products that's fairly trendy is these electrolyte drinks. And I don't think that they're bad for you, I just don't think they're a good deal. There's cheaper ways to get your electrolytes that you don't have to pay through the nose for, because basically they're just taking elements that are abundant and cheap, putting in some flavor, and then doing some fancy marketing and getting people to pay way more for their electrolytes than they actually need to. Your electrolytes are salt, potassium, and in smaller quantities, magnesium. I mean, you can replenish a lot of electrolytes by simply eating a bag of potato chips because they're loaded in salt and potatoes are high in potassium. You might not want all the calories that come along with potato chips, but my point is, the salt is cheap and abundant. Sources of potassium are cheap and abundant. You don't need to pay through the nose for somebody's electrolyte water. But let's say my channel grew and I got large enough where advertisers were actually interested in me. And one of these companies that makes electrolyte drinks decided to sponsor my channel. And they're gonna pay me to, put a little product placement in and talk up their product a little bit. My temptation is to just go along with it. Oh yeah, this electrolyte water, it's so easy to get your electrolytes, it tastes so great. In reality, I believe they're kind of a rip-off, but I'm not going to say that if they're paying me to promote their product, or at least my temptation is not to say that. And on the front end, when you're first getting into this, it's really easy to say, oh, I'm never going to sell out, I'm always going to shoot straight and just tell people what I truly believe. And it's easy to say that from the start, but once you've invested hours and hours and hours into creating content and you're finally starting to see some returns, it's hard to turn up your nose at them. And it's very easy just to go with the flow and make a quick buck, even if it means promoting something that you truly don't believe in. So you might be wondering, so big deal, so some modestly successful YouTubers and influencers might be tempted to promote products that are overpriced from time to time. But what if we look at the larger news outlets where millions of people are tuning in? Say the corporate media, cable news, and established papers of record, you might say. Well, they've got advertisers too, and some of their advertisers are gargantuan. We're talking major international corporations with market caps in the billions, possibly even trillions. And they've got a lot of money to spend to try to get favorable press for their products and services. So I'm going to make up a totally hypothetical scenario here. Let's say that at some point, maybe some point in the future, there's a pandemic. From the first two examples, we could see that the media might have an incentive to overhype the story about the pandemic. I mean, don't get me wrong, the pandemic might be bad, but they have an incentive to make it seem worse than it actually is, which is not good because if people aren't getting an accurate representation of the danger, they're potentially going to overreact to it and cause more problems than the pandemic would have created in and of itself. They also have a temptation to polarize the issue, play to the audience. You're the good person who's taking the pandemic really, really seriously, unlike that whack job down the street that isn't taking the same precautions you are. I mean, here you are, locked yourself in a closet with a can of Lysol, and he's out there on the beach, breathing fresh air, unfiltered by a piece of cloth. I mean, that can't be healthy, right? And let's say in this hypothetical pandemic, all the mitigation efforts tend to be just temporal anyway, because it seems like no matter what people do, everyone ends up getting the bug. Now, thankfully, there seems to be a number of therapeutics that none of which prevent infection or transmission of this hypothetical pandemic, but they at least help reduce the symptoms. If they're taken at the right time, there is evidence that it can help reduce symptoms. Now, let's say some of these treatment options are actually repurposed drugs that have patents that have long expired, and they're actually really cheap, readily available, easy to produce. But then there's other therapeutics that may or may not have been marketed as vaccines in this hypothetical scenario that are brand new and are under patent, and pharmaceutical manufacturers charge through the nose for. Now, let's say some of these pharmaceutical companies that manufacture this particular therapeutic have deep pockets and pay through the nose for advertising to the point of $2.8 billion a year, hypothetically. And they advertise on all these major corporate news networks. Can those networks be trusted to report accurately on this particular therapeutic? Can they be trusted not to denigrate the cheaper treatment options and not to hype the more expensive treatment option? Could they be trusted not to overstate the benefits and understate the potential risks? Well, if you ever find yourself in that situation, I'm not telling you what you should believe. I'm just trying to remind people to stay skeptical. Consider the incentive structure that influences these media companies. Try to independently verify the information. You've been watching the Fletch Report. If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end of the video. But before you click onto the next thing and continue down whatever rabbit hole you're on YouTube or Rumble, I've got a small favor to ask. If you found value in my content and you want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is share it with somebody else that you think will find value in it. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more. Links to the channel on YouTube and Rumble will be provided below. Additionally, I'm making a Facebook page for the channel as well as a X/formerly Twitter feel free to follow me on those platforms as well. If you're feeling exceptionally generous, provided in the description below will be a link to Buy Me a Coffee, which is the online equivalent of a tip jar. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting the channel.